Good afternoon, good day, good evening, wherever you at. Thank you for tuning in. This is A Marvelous back one more time to give you another thought-provoking video. And I want to say I hope everyone's having a great summer. Please like and subscribe, comment, give your feedback and all that good stuff. And I also appreciate you for tuning in because time and attention are two things you can't get back. So with that said, this video is going to be a continuation of the series that I'm doing on the Bilderberg Group. Okay, so for those that don't know, the Bilderberg Group is a meeting that takes place every year by individuals that have pretty much are in control or dictate the resources across the planet. It's pretty much where the Western world comes together, the people that are very influential in the Western world, and they meet to discuss politics and the direction in which this planet should go. So anytime you hear Western world, that's just code for white or European, because as the past few centuries, Europeans have consolidated power to pretty much dictate what's going on planet Earth. In modern day time, 21st century, 20th century, they have developed meetings like the Bilderberg Group, like the World Economic Forum and things of this nature to constantly fine-tune how they can consolidate power, keep order, and dictate the affairs of men and women, okay? So the Bilderberg Group is just one of the major meetings that is allowed for Western nations to communicate with each other, white Europeans, to communicate with each other in order to hold power across the whole globe. So that is just the context of what the Bilderberg meeting is. And in the other videos that I have, which you can check out, you could see more aspects of the Bilderberg Group as I cover other agendas that they have. So this particular video is going to cover one of the agendas that was outlined in 2022, this year of June, when they met. And this particular agenda number 7, because there was 14 points that they covered, different topics that they covered at this meeting. Now, of course, these meetings are closed to the public. They have armed guards. So that right there is a signal that these meetings are not something that's meant for democracy. It's not meant for the average person, the public. It's only meant for a chosen few, and these are the few that have the power to dictate the direction of where things go. Point number 7, that according to the agenda, which you could look at Bilderberg.com, BilderbergMeetings.org, I think it is called Continuity of Government and the Economy. So I'm going to read off what continuity of government is specifically, and then show how these meetings serve as indicators and warnings of where the governments across the country are going. Because whenever they have these meetings, it's almost certain that the agendas covered are going to take place and is going to manifest. So it's really like they plan these things in advance. Once they discuss it and plan it, then it happens. Okay, so whatever you see, these news events and these stories, 10 to 1, you can kind of estimate what's going to happen based upon the meetings that take place and what they discuss. So this is going to cover the Japanese resignation, government resignation, which happened yesterday, which is still going on. So the Japanese government pretty much resigning is just a clue of what's going to take place, not just with Japan, but it's going to take place around the country. You're going to see a realigning of governments, because in the last 3 years, right, what kind of slowed down because of this pandemic was the fact that people around the world were protesting. So if you look at 2019 was the year that the most political unrest has ever taken place on this planet, which means that all areas of the globe, you had the most country and the most people protesting because they were just unhappy with their government. Everywhere from South America to Asia, you had people taken to the streets because they just wasn't happy with the way things were going. That's called populism. Populism. Anytime you see populism in the media, in the newspaper, television, or anywhere, that's basically the people saying that they have a right to govern their own affairs And if the affairs that's taking place in their country, in their nation, is not aligned with the will of the people, then they're going to speak about it and they're going to resist. The resistance and all that, that's populism. In 2019, populism reached an all-time high. And now that this pandemic is declining, it's coming back. And it's being reflected by governments shifting how they're approaching how they rule their nation. So Japan resigning is just an example of things that was already boiling for years now. So the fact that the Bilderberg Meeting covered this continuity of government, and then you see this week Japan actually resigning, is just showing you that these meetings happen and then the events take place. So anything from mass shootings, anything to Ukraine and Russia, whatever you see as a major news event, these things are already discussed. They're already planned in advance. So I just wanted to show that this is just another one of the agendas that was met at in June, and then in 2 months' time, you see an example of this with Japan. So I'm going to read what continuity of government is, just to give more context to this agenda and what exactly I'm talking about, how it relates more so to Japanese resignation, and what that means for America in terms of this meeting, in terms of them planning this out, and how we can see in the media how it's conditioning Americans to actually go through what was already planned. So continuity of government, okay, is the principle of establishing defined procedures that allow a government to continue its essential operations in case of a catastrophic event such as a nuclear war. Now, in Japan, this situation, to my knowledge, had nothing to do with a nuclear war, okay? But the principle still holds the same, because they have to figure out how to operate in suspension of a government and then find the proper government that fits the majority of the people. This is what they're going through now. I'm going to continue. Continuity of government was developed by the British government before and during World War II to counter threats such as that of the Luftwaffe bombing during the Battle of Britain. The need for continuity of government plans gained new urgency with nuclear proliferation. So it says in the U.S., continuity of government is no longer limited to nuclear emergencies. The continuity of operations plan was activated following the September 11 attacks. So what this is saying is now continuity of government, especially in the U.S., is not just about nuclear war. It's about how government is going to proceed in case of a big national emergency. And this is something that's worldwide. So the fact that you're seeing this in Japan, expect a domino effect around the world. Don't think Japan is going to be the only government to have this kind of suspension. You're going to see this kind of upheaval in government around the world, because what else was covered during this meeting and what's been in effect for quite some time is a complete restructuring of the planet, from economics, finance, even to health, right? And that's what this pandemic represented. So Japan is just the beginning. You already have Russia and Ukraine. You already have China and Taiwan, all right? And you already have things going on in the Indo-Pacific region that's calling for a complete uphaul to how things are ran. Okay, so I implore everyone to look at the Bilderberg agenda list, all 14 points, so you can look at the news in context, because all of these things you see is already outlined in these meetings, and the turnaround is very fast. It's been 2 months ago, and already this is what we're seeing. So I'm going to read what is continuity of operations. Continuity of operations is a United States federal government initiative required by U.S. Presidential Policy Directive to ensure that agencies are able to continue performance of essential functions under a broad range of circumstances. PPD 40 specifies certain requirements for continuity plan development, including the requirement that all federal executive branch departments and agencies develop an integrated, overlapping continuity capability that supports the 8 national essential functions. Now, what does all that mean? So basically, if stuff hits the fan in America, they have an outlined plan on how to operate, how to protect government officials and still maintain some kind of order amongst the people and still run some kind of government in case something huge happens. So that's pretty much what continuity of government is, okay? And it's no coincidence that the last few months, they've been conditioning our minds for nuclear war, okay? So when you watch this stuff and you read this stuff and you're on social media, the way that the news is delivered is a code, okay? A lot of words might not make sense. A lot of things might not make sense. But once you understand that there's certain things that's already in motion, when you see nuclear war, we automatically think of some megaton bombs and things like that. In actuality, it might not even be anything about nuclear war. It might just be a signaling to people that understand this message that what's going on is the government as we know it is not going to be the same, right? We see this with Trump. Trump just had his house raided by the FBI. What is that? That's abnormal, okay? So you're seeing a whole bunch of things with government that's just not regular. Why are you seeing this? Because it's already planned by these individuals in these meetings to completely restructure governments around the world. And they have to restructure these governments around the world because they have a timetable, right? By 2030, there's certain benchmarks that the Western civilization, white people in power, European nations, have to reach. And because they're behind schedule, they have to accelerate these plans. So they come up with pathogens that they say kill you, pandemics, constantly coming up with new viruses that they cannot prove or demonstrate. All of this is to accelerate a plan by 2030 that has to be in effect in order to keep nations and cities in a certain amount of order and operation that allows for more control of the people, control of the territory, so that they can increase their resources with less resistance. That's what all of this is about. So when you see things like nuclear war on television, think past nuclear war, think cold. Think, okay, what happens if there is a major event and you got the governments having to operate differently? So what do I mean by operate differently? Part of continuity of government was being able to operate in extreme situations. And this came about during Dwight D. Eisenhower, because Eisenhower was the war president, right? This was the president that pretty much the military-industrial complex was developed. According to Bill Cooper, this was the president in which this country came in contact with extraterrestrials. In the book Behold the Pale Horse, it mentions that. So that time period in the 50s was when America was at its peak. This is when they also developed all of these things, right? So a continuity of operations plan has been a part of U.S. government operations since President Dwight Eisenhower provided various measures designed to ensure that the government of the United States would be able to continue operating after a nuclear war, okay? These measures included construction of underground facilities such as Mount Weather, a putatively nuclear weapon-proof facility in a hollowed-out mountain in northeast Virginia, and Raven Rock Mountain Complex near Camp David in Maryland, okay? So during this time, the Eisenhower administration, they started building these bunkers, these underground facilities, which allowed them to live like they would normally live, except in the full protection in case something happens. And this was built in order to protect, again, like I said, these politicians and the president, but also be able to operate and manage government. You could check something like that out in the movie, Netflix movie, about, I forgot the name of it, but it was about a meteor hitting planet Earth. And these scientists were attempting to warn the United States, and they was laughing at them like they was crazy. But then as they started to see that this was a real threat, they started to take it serious. So not to spoil the movie, but as you see in the movie, when the threat became more real, you started to see the president and all of the top officials retreat to these special bunkers, okay? So they're giving you all of this now in 2022 because the pandemic has already, it's serving its purpose. to consolidate people in their behavior, right? To get people in line and to kind of stop people from being chaotic. It cut out people protesting and being in populism. So now the next phase is to restructure government, to make it in a sense to where you can't protest, you can't show populism, you can't rebel, and also where you're restricted less in your movement, okay? And in order to do that, they have to change the way that government is working. So this is why you see the attacks on Trump, and this is why you see all of these new variants and all of these new viruses, because all of this is hurting people to believe one thing, and then when they believe that one thing, it's easier for them to be herded into a mode of operation, the same type of behavior. Once this habit is changed, when they change government, it'll be a seamless transition. And that's what this is. That's what this continuity of government, point number 7 at the Bilderberg meeting, is all about. So keep that in mind. Where we're headed now is a complete change of government. You might see a complete elimination of the two-party system, right? It might not be no more Democrat, Republic. It might just be one way. You could see a complete overhaul of the 4-term election, you know, where president serves 4 years. Not 4-term, 1 term, 4 years. That could change. You know what I'm saying? It could be something similar to how the feds have it, where they choose somebody and it's for over a decade. You know what I'm saying? Or it could be like a one-time thing, dictatorship type of thing. I don't know. But this is what's possible. So all of these changes that you see, just keep in mind that the government, as we know it, could be done. And this could be the year that it happens. And this is why you're seeing so much politics. This is why you're seeing Trump being attacked so much. This is why you're seeing so much division upon Republican and Democrats, where Democrats is pushing all of this stuff about this virus, but the Republicans is like, nah, this is about something else. Both of them are actors, and both of them could be in on it in terms of playing the game, because it's all a game. But the bottom line is, like you see in Japan, it's not gonna be something that's just isolated to Japan. This is something that's gonna spread throughout the world. You're going to see a complete different kind of government. Now, what's gonna happen is you're going to see some people in these countries that recognize what's going on. They're going to continue to rebel, continue to protest, continue to show this populism type of ideology. This is where your changing cities come in. This is where your restrictions come in. This is where your vaccinations come in. Because as people start to resist this change in government, there has to be a system developed to automatically stop people from gaining momentum in that. And the way you do it is by paralyzing the body. You set up cities and smart cities where you have heightened surveillance, and therefore the people that have all of these things injected in them are linked to some capacity to these smart cities. So if people that are taken to the streets need to be neutralized, the fact that they have all of this stuff in them, which could be linked, as the studies have shown, could be linked to electricity and magnetism and all of these things, you can easily neutralize that threat, because the people has taken these things inside their body with all of these metals and who knows what else could be digitally connected to the frequencies that you see in these towers, the magnetic field and such and such. So this is what's going on. All of these things are taking place in order to neutralize people from rising up against things that they feel is not okay. And that's why you had the whole staged Capitol riots last year. This is why all of these things is coming up. It's coming up to condition people for rising up, but then it's also conditioning people to also stay in line, because you have all of these perceived boogeymen and these perceived threats. So that's what this is about. So let me continue. The George Bush administration put the continuity of operations plan into effect for the first time directly following the September 11 attacks. Their implementation involved a rotating staff of 75 to 150 senior officials and other government workers from every federal executive department and other parts of the executive branch in 2 secure bunkers on the East Coast. Friends, family, and co-workers were only able to reach them through a toll-free number and personal extensions. The Bush administration did not acknowledge the implementation of the continuity of government plan until March 1st, 2002. And here you have some of the facilities that they have. So all of this is to say what you're seeing in Japan, pay attention to Japan, pay attention to how the people react to Japan. Because mind you, they just had an assassination of one of the former presidents. I believe he was the longest standing prime ministers in Japan. And to my knowledge, his grandfather also had an assassination attempt. And this is in the country that has damn near no gun violence. So you have to look at these things preceding the events. Anytime you see a major event, there are little things that happen that give you clues that this is going to happen. Just like with this monkeypox, right? In January, you had monkeys fall off of trucks in Pennsylvania. That never happens really, or at least it's not reported. Then a month later, you had Kanye West and The Game come out with a song, and the cover art for that song was a monkey in all red. Then 3 months later, you got the monkeypox, right? All of these things precede each other. Before a big event has to happen, there has to be things brewing, and there has to be things shown visually in an image to actually condition you for these things to happen. So when you see Japan resign, these things were conditioned because prior to that, you had this Japanese assassination. So it's putting Japan in the forefront, okay? And the next video I'm gonna do, I'm gonna show the same thing with China and Taiwan. So all of these things are laid out according to this plan from this Bilderberg meeting, all right? So that's what this video is to show that this is just another agenda point from the Bilderberg meeting that happened of June of this year that 2 months later is coming true. So when people say that there's no predictive programming, or when people say that these things are not planned in advance, that's just not the case, because I'm showing you that this meeting took place in June, and I'm showing you that one of the agendas was continuity of government. So the fact that Japan resigned now is no coincidence. So you have to look at that. So I'm gonna eventually have a video for each of the 14 points of the Bilderberg meeting, but this one is laid down. So thank you for your attention. There might be a part 2, depending upon news development on this whole issue. But I hope this video was informative. I hope you do more research on the Bilderberg Group. I hope when you see nuclear war or anything nuclear in the news, you know that that's also a signal for possible government change and possible government ruling and operating from bunkers, from remote locations, but still keeping the order of the country. And also take notice of other governments, even before you see it in the news, right? What other governments can possibly resign, fall apart? Because in the video I did about fragmentation of democracy, I was going over how because of populism and people rising up, people are no longer believing in democracy. It's a farce. You see that in America. After the Trump years, people really stopped believing in government to the point to now they don't even know who to vote for. This upcoming election that's coming up, the next presidential election, people don't even know how to operate because the way politics has been happening, especially here in America, nobody is safe. There is no choice. You know what I'm saying? So what happens when you lose complete faith in the way government operates? You have a lot of restlessness in the public. So the individuals that have these meetings understand this. So they prepare for it. So all the restlessness that comes, all the potential violence, all the division that they promote and fan the flames for, they also prepare for a solution. So they give you the division, they give you the problem, and then they give you the solution. And the solution might not be to our benefit. So just keep that in mind. And that's that. So thank you for tuning in. Thanks for your time and attention. Subscribe. Give feedback and also video suggestions. And with that, have a good day. Peace.